cultural expectations and professional risks came at a high price for Barbra Streisand. Whispers followed her every step, accusing her of crossing the line of propriety. Yet she never denied the authenticity she felt. The relationship that sparked such controversy burned bright, only to extinguish just as suddenly, leaving her with an unapologetic lesson: love should never be hidden, even if it cannot endure. Then came Pierre Trudeau, the charismatic and enigmatic Prime Minister of Canada. Their connection transcended borders: intellectual, cultural, magnetic. A world leader and a theatrical virtuoso, they found each other at a crossroads in life. Yet neither could fully step out of their roles. Barbra, hungry for closeness, faced the conflict between public life and private yearning. Their romance, though discreet, left her with admiration and a heart scarred by unfulfilled longing. Trudeau exhibited tenderness, but circumstance and duty ultimately pulled them apart, teaching her that even the most compelling love can be dashed upon the rocks of public expectation. In the 1980s, Barbra's whirlwind romance with Don Johnson, then an up-and-coming TV star and heartthrob, captured tabloid attention. They were glamour personified, she, the enduring icon, he, the on-screen cowboy. But with the glare of fame came pressure, expectations, rumors, and the challenge of turning performance into intimacy. Behind the flashbulbs, they struggled to find normalcy. Barbra, fiercely devoted to her craft and fiercely private, discovered that not every flame thrives under scrutiny. Their love ended with mutual respect, but also with a potent reminder: fame can be seductive, but it often comes at a high emotional cost. Then came Andre Agassi, a love that challenged every stereotype. Their connection in the 1990s was unexpected. She was in her 50s, he in his 20s. Critics buzzed, fans gawked, but Barbra and Andre found beauty in their differences. For her, it was an invitation to feel seen again, to be desired for herself, not her celebrity. Yet the weight of external judgment and their clashing life rhythms eventually wore on them. Their time together was intense, eyebrow-raising, poignant, and reminded Barbra that age, fame, or public opinion cannot dictate the realness of human connection, even if they can derail it. The breakup was painful but uncovered her courage to love boldly and let go gracefully. While Barbra's romantic world navigated the turbulence of public and private lives, motherhood added another layer of complexity. Her first child, Jason Gould, born from her marriage to Elliot Gould, grew up watching his mother under the relentless glare of fame. Barbra's love for Jason was resolute, but her rise to stardom cast long shadows. Her journey meant absences, delays, and decisions that only a mother could feel deeply. When Jason eventually came out as gay, it could have created distance, but instead, Barbra embraced him with fierce, unconditional love and protection. She became one of the few celebrities at the time to publicly support her son, earning admiration from communities often left in the shadows. Through Jason, she learned that parenting can demand as much vulnerability as fame, and that unconditional love may require more courage than any spotlight. Finally, in 1996, she met James Brolin. Something in his steady presence, his unassuming warmth, offered Barbra what she had been searching for her entire life: a partner who listened more than he spoke, who sheltered without overshadowing her. They married in 1998, and more than 2 decades later, remain one of Hollywood's most quietly enduring couples. No tabloid dramas, no public declarations, just a shared look over morning coffee, a walk along Malibu's bluffs, and mutual respect for each other's artistry. They never had children together, but Barbra embraced James' son, Josh, as if he were her own, enriching the circle of their life with the same kind of love she had longed to secure. In James, she discovered that the deepest love doesn't demand headlines. It thrives in small gestures, unwavering presence, and the quiet choice to build a life rooted in loyalty and shared values. Barbra Streisand's romantic journey was never smooth. But each brush with heartbreak sculpted her. From the scandalous fire of fleeting fame to the unassuming grace of lasting devotion, she emerged resilient, open-hearted, and wiser. She proved that true love might scar more than it satisfies, but those scars etched her identity, deepened her capacity to care, and shaped the kind of wealth worth keeping, not financial, but the wealth of a soul tested and softened by love. To Barbra Streisand, her homes and vehicles aren't merely luxurious possessions, they're chapters in a life transformed from hardship into refined artistry. Her Malibu estate, sprawling over 3 private structures nestled within rose gardens and koi ponds, is more than $100 million sanctuary. It's a testament to decades of triumph, where she married James Brolin in a ceremony within its grand parlor, and where she's found solace amid wildfire evacuations. The Upper East Side townhouse, built in the 1930s and once listed at $17.5 million, speaks to her Brooklyn roots, a place she called home soon after her first Oscar win, offering refuge and reinvention. Then there's the Central Park West penthouse, listed at $112.5 million, a two-story retreat overlooking the city's pulse. Despite fame, she always craved intimate privacy. Each property reflects not just status, but story. The Malibu compound marks her creative retreat. The New York homes echo her rise from modest, rent-controlled Brooklyn flats to the heights of Broadway and Hollywood. And then, her cars, every one a symbol of eras and evolution. The 1962 Bentley S3, with plush walnut veneer and a whisper-quiet ride, recalls her breakout funny girl days, gliding from Broadway to film, poise over panic. The 1976 Mercedes-Benz 450 SL, sporty and elegant, mirrors her emergence in the 1970s and 80s, when A Star is Born and Yentl showcased her talent and fierce independence. And the 1926 Rolls-Royce, handcrafted and timeless, evokes her later career as an established icon, a woman whose attention to detail and authenticity defied the industry's stereotypes. These aren't garage fillers, they're personal time capsules. Each engine hum, each polished chrome panel, each vaulted ceiling whispers resilience, tenacity, and the lived reality behind the spotlight. Streisand didn't accumulate wealth to flaunt it. She chose or restored each asset for its meaning, its comfort, and as a symbol of her victories over youth struggles and industry ceilings. Barbra Streisand's greatest contribution may not be her voice or her films, but the legacy she built quietly, behind the curtain, with a heart committed to healing a fractured world. In 1986, she established the Streisand Foundation, not as a vanity project, but as a powerful instrument of social change. Over the decades, the foundation has issued more than 1,000 grants, distributing tens of millions of dollars to causes often overlooked: environmental protection, civil rights, voter engagement, and women's health. Her dedication to women's cardiovascular health alone has saved lives. In 2008, she endowed the creation of a Women's Heart Center at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, an initiative born of both personal concern and scientific neglect. She later raised and contributed millions more to ensure research no longer treated women as statistical footnotes. What began as a donation became a national conversation, and eventually, a movement. Her humanitarian legacy lives in culture. She spoke up for LGBTQ+ rights when few dared. She stood against racism, funded legal aid for the marginalized, and gave with purpose, not just money, but vision. Whether creating a UCLA think tank focused on truth, justice, and climate, or providing direct aid to communities in need, her vision was expansive, yet always deeply personal. Her impact cannot be measured by buildings or plaques, but in the quiet relief of a patient who received care, a student who gained a scholarship, or an activist who found hope in a lonely fight. Through every check she wrote, Barbra Streisand reminded the world, greatness isn't what you own, it's what you give away. In Hollywood, tales of extravagant wealth often end in court battles and broken families. But Barbra Streisand never followed the script. Known for her meticulous planning and quiet dignity, she lived with one eye always on the future, not just of her career, but of her legacy. Though her will remains private, all signs point to a carefully orchestrated plan, one that honors both her bloodline and her chosen family. Her only son, Jason Gould, whom she has supported with unwavering love, will likely carry forward not just her name, but her creative fire. And her stepchildren, embraced with genuine care, may inherit more than memories. Her philanthropic legacy, too, will continue through the Streisand Foundation, ensuring her values echo long after the spotlight fades. Today, Barbra Streisand shares a quiet life with her husband James Brolin, nestled in their Malibu sanctuary. There are no flashing lights, no red carpets. Her days now unfold in gentle rituals, reading by the window, tending to garden blooms, writing memoirs that will someday speak to her legacy. With no social media presence and few public appearances, Streisand has carved out a sanctuary for her values, a space where each sunrise affirms a life rich in meaning, not noise. And while her estate is staggeringly vast, from her Malibu compound to the priceless contributions of her foundation, what truly endures is the private peace she's built away from fame's frenzy. Barbra Streisand's legacy will not be measured in dollar signs or square footage, but in the courage she inspired, the voices she lifted, and the path she forged with unwavering integrity. Her story is a symphony of resistance, talent, and transformation, louder than applause, more lasting than any chart-topping hit. Now, we want to hear from you. On a scale from 0 to 10, how do you rate Barbra Streisand, not just as an artist, but as an extraordinary woman? Do you believe her inheritance will honor her spirit? Share your thoughts and favorite memories in the comments below. It's in our reflections that her legacy truly lives on. It wasn't a dramatic headline or a public tragedy. It was a quiet, aching loss. No music, no fanfare, just a family in pain and a woman wondering how, with all her power and success, she still couldn't save the one person who needed her most. Tayer's obituary was short, her death even shorter, but the grief it left behind lingered far longer. For Dolly Parton, it was a devastating reminder that fame can't fix everything, money can't reach everyone, and love, no matter how deep, is sometimes not enough to change fate. Tayer was just 36. And sometimes, the most unbearable sorrow is watching someone fade away long before their story should have ended. For all the songs Dolly has written about love, dreams, and heartbreak, there is one song she never sang, because it was never hers to live. It was the song of motherhood, a melody she carried in her heart, but one the world would never hear. When Dolly married Carl Dean in 1966, she dreamed of a house filled with children's laughter, of bedtime stories, and tiny shoes lined up by the door. She wanted that badly. But as fame grew louder, that quiet dream drifted further from reach. Then in 1982, a private health crisis caused by endometriosis forced her into surgery. When she left the hospital, she wasn't just recovering from a procedure, she was leaving behind a part of herself. A future she'd envisioned so vividly was gone, just like that. She later confessed, "Every day I thought, I wish I had the nerve to just end it all." The woman who could light up a stadium with her smile was curling up in bed, feeling like life had quietly shut a door she hadn't realized would never open again. It wasn't just physical pain, it was the aching absence of something she would never get to hold. No chubby hands tugging at her dress, no giggles echoing down her hallway, no tiny voice whispering, "I love you, Mama." It was a silence that screamed. And though Dolly poured her nurturing soul into raising her siblings and later into millions of children through her imagination library, the wound never truly closed. How do you grieve a child that never came? She tried to explain it once, saying, "Maybe God had a bigger plan. Maybe I was meant to mother the world." But even in those words, there's a tremble, a trace of sorrow. Because love that big doesn't disappear. It lingers. And every time she sees a child open a book from her foundation, every time she sees a parent holding a baby at her concert, she smiles. But inside, a part of her still aches. Not all heartbreaks are loud. Some whisper for decades. And Dolly, she's carried that whisper every day of her life. The 1980s were supposed to be Dolly Parton's golden decade. Chart-topping hits, blockbuster movies, sold-out concerts, and the world hanging on every note she sang. But behind the sequins and the flawless smile was a woman barely holding herself together. While millions saw a radiant icon, Dolly was quietly spiraling into one of the darkest chapters of her life. It wasn't just career pressure. At the heart of her breakdown was what she described as an affair of the heart, a deep emotional entanglement that left her feeling hollow. Combined with health issues, family drama, and the soul-crushing demands of fame, it became too much. She began canceling tour dates, stopped writing songs, and slowly slipped into something darker, depression. Not the kind you see in movies, the real, paralyzing kind. The kind where getting out of bed feels impossible. Where the world becomes gray. Dolly later admitted that during this time, she didn't just feel lost, she felt numb. "I woke up every day feeling dead inside," she said. She turned to food for comfort. Her health deteriorated. Her energy faded. She described lying in bed for days, staring at the ceiling, wishing it would all just end. And then came the moment that nearly did. Alone at home, Dolly found herself reaching toward a familiar drawer, one that held something she once kept for protection. In that crushing silence, she wondered if peace could be found in escape. The despair was so heavy it nearly pulled her under. But then she heard a sound, the soft tapping of paws. Her little dog, Papy, had sensed something was wrong and came looking for her. That tiny interruption, so simple and pure, shook her back into the world. She broke down and cried, and it saved her. Later, she would call Papy a spiritual messenger, a sign that her life still had purpose. That terrifying moment became a turning point. Dolly got help. She leaned on her faith and her music. She found her way back. But the scars never fully faded. It's hard to imagine the queen of country music, this beacon of strength, once sat alone, drowning in pain. But that's what makes her story so human. She didn't just overcome depression. She carried it with grace, with resilience, and with the quiet bravery few ever saw. Because the most powerful smiles are often hiding the deepest storms. For decades, Carl Dean was the one person Dolly Parton could count on to love her, not as a legend, not as a brand, but as a woman. He was her home, her quiet in the chaos, the man who never needed the spotlight because her smile was enough. But in 2025, at 82 years old, he left this world, taking with him a love story so sacred, so private, that even death seemed too public for it. He passed peacefully in their Nashville home. There were no reporters, no cameras, just silence. And that silence was deafening. Dolly, who had always turned pain into melody, suddenly had no song to sing. Friends say she disappeared from the world, retreating into the kind of grief only widows understand, the kind where even breathing feels like betrayal. She planned every detail of the funeral herself. No publicists. No press. Just love. The chapel on their property, where Carl used to pray, became a sanctuary of sorrow. Wildflowers he once picked lined the altar. Photos from 58 years together told a story no camera ever caught. When Dolly stood to speak, she didn't address the mourners. She looked only at his casket. Her voice shook, but she didn't cry, not yet. She thanked him for loving the real her, the woman in sweatpants, not sequins. Then, she opened a folded letter Carl had written her years before. "You were always my shining star," it read. "But I never needed the world to know. Just you." Then Dolly did something no one expected. She picked up her guitar and sang a song no one had ever heard. A song she had written for Carl decades ago. Meant only for him. Her voice faltered. The room fell still. By the final verse, she was weeping. So was everyone else. It wasn't a performance. It was a collapse. A woman who had carried millions with her voice now had to carry her own broken heart. Carl's death wasn't just the loss of a husband. It was the end of the only world Dolly ever truly belonged to. And yet in that grief, she showed the greatest love of all, the kind that doesn't need an audience. The kind that survives long after the curtain falls. Now at 78, Dolly Parton lives surrounded by everything she once dreamed of, wealth beyond imagining, fame carved into history, a home fit for royalty. And yet, what echoes loudest in her Tennessee estate is silence. She remains in Brentwood, in the mansion she shared with Carl. Acres of manicured grounds, red-roofed buildings, a private chapel, and a porch where they used to talk until the stars blinked out. Now, she sits alone. The house hasn't changed. His pictures still line the hallway. His chair remains untouched. His boots, she once whispered, are still by the door. Dolly may be surrounded by staff, family, and famous friends, but the one voice she longs to hear will never call her name again. She still wakes early. Still makes breakfast. Still walks the grounds. Sometimes she hums, not for a record, just for him. Though she has no biological children, she pours herself into godchildren, especially Miley Cyrus, and countless kids touched by her library. But even with all that love, the absence of someone to come home to has left its quiet mark. She once said, "If I could trade every diamond for another day with him, I would." Dolly still works, still writes. Dollywood thrives. Her songs earn millions. Her estate is worth over $650 million. But none of it shines like Carl's smile once did. She has all the applause in the world. But as the sun sets over her quiet hills and the porch swing creaks in the wind, Dolly Parton, one of the most adored women in music, sits in a home full of memories, whispering to the only man who ever saw the real her. Her life is filled with grace and shadows, and a longing that 1,000 songs could never quite sing. Dolly Parton has never been just a singer or a celebrity. She is a national treasure. Her legacy was not built in arenas or recording booths, but in hearts. She rose from poverty in a one-room cabin and became a symbol of generosity and quiet strength. She never forgot where she came from, and made sure the world didn't either. Her philanthropy changed lives. Her music healed wounds. and her honesty became gospel for generations. Now, in her twilight years, she prepares for what comes next. She's made arrangements, not for a dramatic farewell, but for a legacy of purpose, literacy, healthcare, music education, and the protection of Appalachian culture. Her fortune will uplift the barefoot dreamers who now stand where she once stood. Because Dolly's true wealth was never in dollars, it was in values. In loving harder than life allows. One day, when her voice is only heard through records, her name will still echo in libraries, in the laughter of a child holding a book, and in the hearts she quietly saved. That will be Dolly's legacy. That will be her final song. In the end, Dolly Parton's life is not just a story of riches, fame, or even resilience. It's a love letter to the music, the mountains, and the man who stood beside her until the end. She has given the world so much. And when the final curtain falls, she will leave behind more than a fortune. She'll leave behind grace, love, and a quiet power that never forgot where it came from. But as she walks through the silence now, one question still lingers. Who will carry that legacy when she's gone? We'd love to hear from you. What part of Dolly Parton's story moved you the most? And what do you think of the life and legacy she's built? Let us know in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, where we honor not just the stars, but the souls behind them.